Most men will never hear this in their entire lifetime, and that's exactly why what I'm about to say may make you uncomfortable. Because the moment you understand this, you can't unsee it. And if you've ever wondered why some older men walk into a room and younger women notice them instantly, before they speak, before they explain, before they even try, this is the reason. It has nothing to do with money, nothing to do with looks, nothing to do with clever words or confidence tricks. In fact, the men who try the hardest are usually the ones who fail the fastest. And once attraction is lost at this level, no amount of talking can recover it. Here's the unsettling truth: most attraction decisions are already made in silence, before conversation, before charm, before logic. And if you don't understand what's being evaluated in those first few seconds, you may spend years saying the right things to the wrong result. What makes this dangerous is that no one will tell you. You'll just feel it. Short replies, polite smiles, fading interest, without ever knowing why. And the older you get, the more confusing it becomes, because you assume experience should work in your favor, but experience without awareness can actually work against you. In this video, we're going to expose what younger women instinctively pick up on before a man ever opens his mouth. Not surface-level advice, not dating tactics, but the deeper psychological signals that decide attraction before you're even aware a decision has been made. Stay with me until the end, because the final insight is the one that changes everything. It's not about becoming more impressive. It's about removing the one thing that silently disqualifies most men, without them ever realizing it happened. Before an older man ever speaks, before he explains who he is or what he's achieved, something far more decisive has already happened. An internal judgment has been made, not consciously, not with words, but through instinct. And this is where most men misunderstand attraction. They believe it begins with conversation, with wit, with saying the right thing. It doesn't. It begins with perception, and perception is formed in seconds. Human beings are wired to assess safety, confidence, and emotional stability almost instantly. Long before logic comes in, the nervous system is already responding. Younger women, in particular, are highly attuned to this because they are evaluating not just attraction, but emotional risk. What they notice first is not appearance alone, but coherence. Does this man feel settled in himself, or does he feel like he's performing a role? Energy is not something you manufacture, it's something you reveal. A man can rehearse lines, perfect posture, curate clothing, but none of that hides internal tension. If you are seeking approval, it leaks. If you are uncertain of your value, it shows, not dramatically, but subtly, in eye contact that lingers too long, in speech that comes too quickly, in smiles that arrive before anything has been earned. What's often mistaken for confidence is actually control, and what's often mistaken for charm is anxiety in disguise. Younger women notice how hard you are trying to manage the interaction. They sense whether you are present or strategizing, and the moment they feel that you need a specific outcome from them, attraction begins to collapse. There is a deep psychological truth here: desire does not coexist with pressure. When a man enters a space needing validation, he applies pressure without realizing it. Pressure to respond, to like him, to confirm his worth. Even if he says nothing inappropriate, even if he behaves politely, the emotional demand is still felt. Contrast that with a man who is internally complete. His body is relaxed. His movements are unhurried. His attention is focused but not consuming. He doesn't scan for reactions. He doesn't adjust himself mid-interaction to secure approval. He allows the moment to unfold. That absence of urgency communicates something powerful. I am already okay. This is why silence matters so much. Silence reveals the truth of a person. Someone who is comfortable with silence is someone who is comfortable with themselves. Someone who rushes to fill it is often trying to escape their own discomfort. Younger women notice this immediately. They notice whether silence feels calm or awkward, whether it feels like shared space or emotional tension. And here's the part most men resist hearing. Attraction is not about impressing, it's about not disturbing. A grounded presence does not disrupt emotional safety, it enhances it. Younger women respond to men whose presence feels regulating rather than demanding. There's also a philosophical layer to this. A man who knows who he is does not announce it. Identity that needs explanation is fragile. Identity that is embodied is felt. This is why men who talk excessively about their success, their wisdom, or their experiences often undermine themselves. They are telling instead of being. The need to explain oneself is often rooted in fear of being misunderstood or overlooked. But confidence does not chase understanding. It allows misinterpretation to exist without collapse. Younger women notice whether a man can tolerate ambiguity, whether he needs to be immediately seen in a certain way, or whether he trusts that clarity will emerge over time. This trust is not arrogance, it is self-assurance. And self-assurance is deeply attractive because it signals emotional maturity. It suggests that the man has lived long enough to know that not everyone's perception matters, and not every moment requires correction. Another critical element is emotional pacing. Younger women notice whether a man accelerates intimacy unnaturally, oversharing too early, disclosing deep wounds, rushing familiarity. These are often framed as vulnerability, but they are usually attempts to bond quickly out of insecurity. True emotional depth unfolds gradually. It respects time. A man who understands this does not try to collapse distance. He allows curiosity to build. He does not confuse intensity with connection. Younger women sense this difference instinctively. Intensity can feel invasive. Calm curiosity feels safe. Even posture plays a role here. A man who stands comfortably, who occupies space without apology, who doesn't shrink or exaggerate himself, communicates internal alignment. His body and mind are in agreement. There is no contradiction between how he feels and how he behaves. That congruence is rare, and rarity attracts attention. What's important to understand is that none of this is about manipulation. It's not about tactics. It's about self-relationship. The way you relate to yourself determines how others experience you. If you doubt yourself, others feel uncertainty. If you respect yourself, others sense stability. Younger women are not looking for perfection. They are looking for coherence. They are assessing whether your words will later contradict your behavior, whether your confidence will collapse under stress, whether your calm is genuine or rehearsed. And this assessment happens before dialogue, before stories, before charm. It happens in how you enter a room, how you sit, how you observe, how you wait. It happens in what you don't do just as much as what you do. Many men believe attraction is built by adding more effort, more explanation, more presence. In reality, it's often built by subtraction, removing neediness, removing urgency, removing the compulsion to be chosen. When a man is not trying to be impressive, he often becomes impressive. When he is not seeking approval, he becomes trustworthy. When he is not asking to be validated, he becomes validating. This is the paradox. The less you need the interaction to define you, the more powerful your presence becomes within it. And here is the final truth to sit with. Attraction begins where self-respect is already established, not performed, not negotiated, established. So before you speak, before you approach, before you attempt to connect, ask yourself this. Not what am I about to say, but who am I being when I say nothing? Because that is what they notice first. What most people call confidence is often misunderstood. It's loud, performative, sometimes even aggressive. It announces itself. But what younger women are actually responding to is something far quieter and far more rarer: emotional stability. And this is where many older men get confused. They believe attraction is about projecting strength outward, when in reality it's about regulating chaos inward. Emotional stability is not the absence of emotion. It is mastery over reaction. It is the ability to experience discomfort without becoming destabilized by it. Younger women notice this immediately because emotional volatility, even in subtle forms, signals unpredictability, and unpredictability feels unsafe. A man who becomes irritated easily, who reacts defensively, who needs to correct, justify, or dominate a moment emotionally, reveals something important. He may appear confident on the surface, but underneath, his nervous system is reactive, and reactivity erodes trust. Calm, on the other hand, builds it. Younger women notice how you respond when plans change, when a joke doesn't land, when you're challenged, when you're ignored. Do you tighten up? Do you withdraw? Do you overcompensate? Or do you remain steady, unaffected, grounded in yourself? This steadiness communicates that you are not governed by external circumstances, that you are not emotionally outsourced, that your sense of self does not rise and fall with someone else's approval or behavior. Psychologically, this is deeply attractive because it suggests emotional safety. A regulated man becomes a regulating presence. His calm lowers the emotional temperature of the room. His composure allows others to relax. This is not dominance through control. It is dominance through containment. One of the clearest signals of emotional stability is how a man handles silence and uncertainty. When there's a pause in conversation, does he rush to fill it? When there's ambiguity, does he push for clarity immediately? When there's emotional distance, does he try to close it prematurely? These behaviors are subtle, but they reveal anxiety. They suggest a discomfort with not knowing, with not being reassured, with not being in control of the emotional direction. Younger women feel this pressure, even if they can't articulate it. A stable man does not rush emotional processes. He understands that connection unfolds, not accelerates. He allows silence to exist without interpreting it as rejection. He allows distance without assuming loss. This patience signals inner security, and patience is often mistaken for indifference by insecure minds. But in reality, it is the highest form of confidence. Another critical aspect is emotional restraint. This does not mean emotional suppression. It means discernment, knowing what to share, when to share it, and with whom. Younger women notice whether a man unloads emotional weight prematurely, disguising it as honesty or vulnerability. Oversharing too early is not depth. It's often a bid for connection before trust has been built. It places emotional responsibility on the listener, and that can feel overwhelming. A mature man understands that emotional intimacy is earned through consistency, not confession. He doesn't seek emotional caretaking. He is capable of holding his own emotional experiences without requiring immediate validation. This is why emotional stability often feels grounding rather than exciting at first. It doesn't create emotional spikes. It creates emotional coherence. And while volatility can be stimulating in the short term, it becomes exhausting over time. Younger women, even if drawn to excitement, are biologically and psychologically wired to prioritize safety at a deeper level. Emotional safety is not boring, it is calming, and calm allows attraction to deepen rather than burn out. Notice how emotionally stable men handle disagreement. They don't escalate, they don't personalize, they don't need to win. They can disagree without becoming disagreeable. They listen without collapsing. They assert without attacking. This ability to hold opposing views without emotional breakdown signals high self-esteem. It shows that the man's identity is not threatened by difference, that he is not fragile. Fragility is the opposite of confidence. Another overlooked signal is how a man handles frustration. Life does not go smoothly. Things fail. People disappoint. Plans fall apart. Younger women are watching how you process this. Do you become cynical? Do you externalize blame? Do you carry resentment? Or do you adapt? Do you take responsibility where appropriate and let go where necessary? Emotional stability is revealed not in moments of success, but in moments of friction. A man who can absorb frustration without displacing it onto others is a man who feels safe to be around. No one wants to walk on eggshells. No one wants to manage someone else's mood. And this is where emotional stability intersects with leadership. Leadership is not about directing others. It is about self-direction. It is about being the calmest person in the room when tension rises. Younger women notice who remains centered when things get uncomfortable. Who doesn't emotionally leak stress, irritation, or insecurity into the environment? That presence is magnetic because it signals reliability. Importantly, emotional stability also shows in how a man handles attention. Some men become inflated when admired. Others become deflated when ignored. Both reveal emotional dependence. A stable man remains consistent. Praise does not intoxicate him. Disinterest does not humiliate him. His emotional baseline remains steady. This consistency builds trust. Trust builds attraction. And here is the philosophical truth beneath all of this. Emotional stability comes from a solid relationship with oneself. It comes from knowing your values, your limits, your direction. It comes from having processed your past rather than dragging it unresolved into present interactions. You cannot fake this. You can rehearse confidence, but you cannot rehearse calm. Calm is earned through self-awareness, self-discipline, and emotional integration. That is why emotionally stable men often feel older than their years, and emotionally reactive men often feel younger than their age. Maturity is not time-based. It is regulation-based. Younger women are not looking for perfection. They are looking for emotional predictability paired with depth. Someone whose reactions make sense. Someone whose presence feels steady. So if you want to be more attractive, the work is not in learning better lines or sharper strategies. The work is internal. It is learning to pause before reacting, to observe before responding, to tolerate discomfort without outsourcing it. It is learning that strength is not intensity. It is steadiness. And the final thought to leave with you is this: when you become emotionally stable, you stop needing attraction to prove your worth. And paradoxically, that is when attraction begins to grow. Calm is not passive, it is powerful. And those who master it are always noticed. Self-respect is one of the few qualities that does not need to be announced because it is always revealed. You can't hide it, and you can't fake it for long. Younger women notice it immediately, not because they are searching for it, but because the absence of it creates friction. And presence, when it's authentic, creates ease. Most men think self-respect is about confidence or self-esteem. It's not. Self-respect is about boundaries. It's about what you tolerate, what you walk away from, and what you never explain twice. It is the quiet agreement you have with yourself about how you allow others to treat you. And this agreement shows up everywhere. Younger women notice whether a man overextends himself early on, whether he gives too much too fast, whether he reshapes his schedule, his values, or his standards just to be liked. Over-giving is often mistaken for generosity, but psychologically, it signals something else: a negotiation of worth. When a man gives excessively without being asked, he is often trying to secure a position rather than offer value. And security obtained through sacrifice rarely feels attractive. It feels heavy. It implies future expectations. Younger women sense this instinctively. Self-respect moves differently. It gives without draining. It offers without attachment. It does not chase appreciation. Another clear signal is how a man handles disrespect, even subtle forms of it. Not everything requires confrontation, but everything requires awareness. A self-respecting man does not ignore patterns that erode him. He notices tone shifts. He notices dismissal. He notices inconsistency. And when necessary, he disengages calmly. This is important. Self-respect is not aggression. It is not defensiveness. It is not proving a point. It is simply the refusal to remain where your value is being compromised. Younger women notice whether a man can walk away without drama, whether he needs to punish, lecture, or explain his exit, or whether he can step back with composure, trusting that his absence speaks clearly enough. That restraint communicates power. Another aspect of self-respect is selectivity. Men who respect themselves are not impressed by everyone. They do not hand out access indiscriminately. They observe, they assess, they choose. This does not mean they are judgmental. It means they are intentional. They understand that access to their time, energy, and attention is valuable, and value is protected. Younger women notice whether a man is eager to be accepted or comfortable being evaluated. A man who needs acceptance lowers his standards to maintain connection. A man who respects himself allows compatibility to be determined naturally. This shift changes everything. When a man is willing to lose someone rather than lose himself, he becomes magnetic. Not because he is detached, but because he is anchored. Boundaries also show in communication. A self-respecting man does not over-explain. Over-explanation often comes from fear of being misunderstood or disliked. But clarity does not require excess, it requires certainty. Younger women notice whether a man can state his position simply and stand by it. Whether he keeps justifying, softening, or apologizing for his preferences. The more a man apologizes for who he is, the less convincing his presence becomes. This doesn't mean rigidity. It means self-trust, knowing when to adjust and when to hold firm. Another revealing area is consistency. Self-respect creates alignment between words and actions. A man who respects himself does what he says he will do, not because he is perfect, but because his word matters to him. Inconsistency erodes attraction quickly. It creates confusion. Confusion feels unsafe. Younger women are watching whether your behavior matches your intentions, whether your energy fluctuates depending on attention, whether your interest feels stable or reactive. Consistency signals reliability. Reliability builds respect, and respect is foundational to attraction that lasts. Younger women also notice how a man treats people who offer him nothing. This is a direct reflection of self-respect. A man who is cruel, dismissive, or condescending to those without status is revealing insecurity. He is ranking humans to feel elevated. Self-respect does not need comparison. It does not need to diminish others to feel intact. It remains steady regardless of who is watching. Another subtle signal is how a man responds to boundaries set by others. Does he push? Does he guilt? Does he negotiate? Or does he accept limits without resentment? A man who cannot respect someone else's boundaries usually struggles to enforce his own, and younger women are highly sensitive to this. Respect for autonomy is deeply attractive because it signals emotional maturity. Self-respect also shows in pacing. A man who respects himself does not rush intimacy to fill emotional gaps. He does not cling. He does not pursue someone who is clearly unavailable or uninterested. He recognizes mutual effort, and when effort is not reciprocated, he withdraws without bitterness. This ability to let go gracefully is one of the strongest signals of inner strength. It communicates abundance, not necessarily in options, but in self-worth. Men who lack self-respect often stay too long, explain too much, and tolerate too little alignment. They hope effort will earn value, but value is never earned through endurance. Younger women sense when a man is staying because he wants to, versus because he is afraid to leave, and that difference changes how he is perceived. Here is the deeper philosophical layer. Self-respect is rooted in identity. When you know who you are and what you stand for, your boundaries are not strategies. They are expressions. You don't enforce them aggressively. You don't threaten. You don't warn repeatedly. You simply act in alignment with them. And alignment is felt. The paradox is that when you stop trying to be chosen and start choosing yourself, others begin to choose you. Not all of them, but the right ones. Because self-respect filters. It repels those who benefit from your lack of boundaries and attracts those who can meet you where you stand. So if you want to increase your attractiveness, don't ask how to get more approval. Ask where you have been betraying yourself. Where have you been tolerating what doesn't sit right? Where have you been giving to secure connection? Where have you been shrinking to be accepted? Correcting those patterns does not require confidence. It requires honesty. And here is the closing truth to reflect on: attraction grows where self-respect is non-negotiable. The moment you stop asking others to value you and start acting as if you already do, everything about how you are received begins to change. One of the most misunderstood dynamics in attraction is the difference between desire and dependency. Many men believe that showing interest means centering the other person, prioritizing them quickly, and demonstrating how important they are. But younger women are not drawn to men who need them. They are drawn to men who are already whole. Wholeness is not emotional distance. It is emotional sufficiency. It is the sense that your life is already moving forward with purpose, meaning, and direction, and that another person would be an addition, not a rescue. Younger women notice this immediately. They notice whether a man's life feels full or whether it feels like it's waiting. Waiting to be chosen, waiting to be validated, waiting to feel complete. A man who is waiting places pressure on the interaction without realizing it. His attention carries expectation. His interest carries urgency. His presence subtly asks the other person to fill a gap. And no matter how kind, attractive, or successful he is, that gap is felt. Desire does not thrive where responsibility is implied. A whole man does not approach connection as something that will fix him. He approaches it as something that can enrich him. There is a fundamental difference in energy between those two positions. One feels heavy, the other feels expansive. Younger women want to step into a life that already exists. They do not want to become the center that holds everything together. They do not want to feel that if they leave, the structure collapses. This is why purpose matters so deeply, not as a talking point, not as a status symbol, but as an internal compass. A man with purpose is oriented towards something beyond immediate gratification. His attention is not scattered. His energy is not desperate. He knows where he's going, even if the path isn't fully clear yet. That direction creates gravity. When a man's life revolves entirely around romantic pursuit, it signals emotional hunger. When romance is one meaningful part of a broader, purposeful life, it signals balance. Younger women are extremely sensitive to this distinction. They notice how you speak about your time, whether you protect it or give it away freely to anyone who shows interest, whether your days are structured around growth or around distraction, whether your life feels intentional or reactive. Wholeness is revealed in how you allocate your energy. A man who is whole does not over-invest early. He does not collapse his world around potential connection. He remains consistent. He shows interest without obsession. He engages without abandoning himself. This steadiness feels safe because it suggests emotional independence. Emotional independence does not mean emotional unavailability. It means your emotional state is not dependent on external validation. You can enjoy connection without clinging to it. You can appreciate attention without needing it to confirm your worth. Younger women feel this immediately. They sense whether your interest is clean or loaded, whether it is offered freely or demanded quietly. Another important aspect of wholeness is emotional fulfillment outside of romance, friendships, passions, solitude. A man who cannot sit with himself will eventually ask someone else to do it for him. And that is exhausting. A man who is comfortable alone brings ease into connection. He does not rush intimacy because he is not trying to escape loneliness. He allows bonds to form naturally because he does not fear being by himself. This is why solitude is such a powerful teacher. It reveals whether you enjoy your own company or merely tolerate it. Wholeness is built in those moments, not in performance. Younger women notice whether a man seems to have an inner life, depth that does not require constant stimulation, thoughtfulness that is not performative, emotional range that is grounded rather than volatile. They also notice whether a man's identity is stable. Does he adapt himself excessively depending on who he is with? Does he mirror preferences, opinions, and values to gain closeness? Or does he remain himself, even when that means not being universally liked? Wholeness creates integrity. Integrity creates trust. A man who changes himself to be chosen may get attention, but he loses respect. A man who remains aligned with himself, even at the risk of rejection, becomes compelling. There is also a subtle but important truth here. A whole man is not afraid of losing connection. Not because he doesn't care, but because his sense of self does not disappear without it. Fear of loss is one of the strongest drivers of neediness. And neediness, no matter how quietly expressed, repels attraction. Younger women notice how you handle emotional uncertainty, whether you cling, pressure, or attempt to secure reassurance prematurely, or whether you allow space without panic. Space is not distance when you are whole, it is breathing room. A man who trusts himself does not interpret every pause as a threat. He understands that connection has rhythm, that closeness and distance are both necessary. That desire grows in presence, but it also grows in absence. This understanding cannot be faked. It comes from internal stability. Wholeness also shows in how a man handles rejection or disinterest. Does he internalize it as a reflection of his worth, or does he see it as information, not indictment? A whole man does not personalize incompatibility. He does not become bitter. He does not chase what has already stepped away. He respects the boundary and returns to his life without resentment. That response alone is deeply attractive, even when the interaction ends. And here is the philosophical core of this point. You cannot build desire from lack. You can only build desire from fullness. When you come from lack, you want to take. When you come from fullness, you are able to offer. An offering without expectation is one of the most powerful relational energies there is. Younger women feel the difference immediately. They feel whether you are hoping they will choose you so you can feel whole, or whether you are choosing them because you already are. The irony is this: the moment you stop needing to be chosen, you become more choosable, not to everyone, but to those who are emotionally healthy enough to recognize stability when they see it. So if you are listening to this and wondering what to do differently, the answer is not to try harder in dating. It is to build a life that feels meaningful even without it. Develop your purpose. Strengthen your friendships. Invest in your growth. Learn to enjoy your own company. Create a life that you respect, because when you do, connection stops feeling like survival and starts feeling like choice. And here is the final thought to carry with you. When you become whole, you no longer chase attraction. You create the conditions where it naturally comes to you.